the night. I am Batman!
Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books, I love talking about them, and I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below, and I've also posted a link to the DC fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for all these issues. So I wanted to look at Alan Davis before he took over Detective Comics, before he went to and did some solo X-Men stories with Claremont, before he did Excalibur, before all that stuff. His really first American work he had done Captain Britain for Marvel UK. I actually have that covered with the Alan Moore issues. But Batman and the Outsiders was really his breakthrough that he completed. But obviously, this is not Alan Davis here. This is Alan Davis starts in the middle of a story. But I just want to show you something. So Jim Aparo is someone I like. I like Jim Aparo. He becomes the regular artist in Batman again. Now, Jim Aparo, number one, what I love about him is he works on a brush, and anybody that works on a brush is one of my things here. It's just, I love big, thick, bold lines like Klaus Janson, Jim Aparo. Oh my gosh. There's so many people, but Dick Giordano. That's who I was trying to think of. Many others. Al Milgrom. I love inkers that ink with a big, thick brush. And I'm pretty old school with that. However, I'm also able to tell you that it is dated. Now, this is from 1985, and we're about to see in just a few years Todd McFarlane, who I believe Todd McFarlane during this time is doing Infinity Inc. Now, he's not the Todd McFarlane that we all know and love, but his style is starting to be different. We're gonna see. So the reason I'm starting here is because I want you to see Jim Aparo and then just look at Alan Davis, and it is so different. Jim Aparo started in the late 60s and worked through the 70s, and he, I think, was the best artist in after Neil Adams, but he was definitely one who really did really good solid work, and his 70s work is way better than his 80s work. And in the 80s, as you can see in these things, I mean, it's fine, but as a it's just not dynamic. There is just a lot of standard. By the way, Mike W. Barr is going to be the writer of everything that we're going to go through today. And we're really only going to go through the Alan Davis stuff. But as I mentioned, we are going to look at Jim Aparo first so that you can see just what a difference Alan Davis is. And I don't know why DC Comics waited so long to stick him in Detective Comics. Now, he only did about 10 issues of Detective Comics, and I have those issues covered. I have a Batman playlist where this is going to be, and this is Halo. This is what this story is about. And we are not going to concern ourselves with story at all. We're simply going to look at the beautiful art. And now you may not think Jim Aparo is beautiful art. And like I said, we're only doing this issue. This is Bruce Wayne. It is, after all, Batman and the Outsiders. And it really does look dated. Even as someone who is a big fan of his, Jim Aparo, just some of these artists just did not work as well in this new era, and you could just I can appreciate their work, knowing also that there was limitation even in this. I mean, his storytelling is solid. There's nothing wrong with this as a storyteller. It's just not dynamic, and that, I think, is the bigger issue here. Um, and we're gonna see when we get to Alan Davis next that it's just wow. And that is but like I said, to really appreciate what we're about to see with Alan Davis, we do have to see Jim Aparo. And again, I am a fan of Jim Aparo. I don't need people in the comments saying, "Oh, don't hate the great Jim Aparo." I love Jim Aparo. I call him the DC John Romita. Um, it's just that he the differences, of course, between Jim Aparo again go to that ink line. John Romita is a more they both work on a pen, but John Romita Senior is more polished, whereas Jim Aparo, I mean, it just likes to lay on more darks and than what Jim Aparo does. So, all right, we're nearing the end of this issue here. This is Katana, who I think is in the regular Batman title even nowadays here. And um and so Jim Aparo will be taking over with Jim Starlin on the regular Batman title. So this is the last page of the Jim Aparo, and we are gonna now go over to Alan Davis. And so here we go with number 22. And as you can see, the truth about Halo Part 3. So the fact that they stick him in the middle of it's kind of weird. I always thought that the main guy, or the guy, the artist, would finish a storyline. I love the color hold, the white in there. So here we go. The Alan Davis era is about to begin. Now, Alan Davis, I believe, during this time is inking himself, but Paul Neary will be coming. Now, one of the things I love about Davis in the beginning was just eyelids on Batman. Now, he doesn't do it all the time. And look at just the difference. Now, Alan Davis cut his teeth in Marvel UK, and this just looks so awesome. So Halo, Katana, Metamorpho, Geoforce, and Black Lightning. That is our cast of characters, and I don't know who this lady is. She's not important enough for me to know. And I love this image of a Batman. It is just so striking, and you can already see Alan Davis is using a brush, but he's also uses a pen, and you can see brush here nice and thick, but to get some of these lines here, he is using a pen to get these fine lines here. And so here we go, and you can already see there's a love to the 70s with the black here just on the face, not over putting ink on Batman. And during what had happened is Batman had left the Justice League and joined the Outsiders, and so Batman during this time was not in the Justice League here. So this is, I don't know it's if this is pre-crisis or post. I think this is post-crisis. So anyway, we are looking here and at how different this looks. And although I only showed you one issue of Jim Aparo basically almost drew the entire thing from number one. I believe he only missed like 3 or 4 issues. So he did the vast majority of those 20 some issues. And Alan Davis will do quite a few of them coming up before he has a short run on Detective Comics, which ends with the first issue of Batman Year 2. That was Alan Davis's last issue. Todd McFarlane does the last 3. Alan Davis goes to Marvel. Now he's still learning, or he's still at least starting to. He's only been drawing comics for maybe 3 or 4 years at Marvel UK, and he's still sort of growing into himself. But when he takes on the Detective Comics, he's fully Alan Davis. And the Alan Davis that we love now and see now, he is complete by in just a few more years. So when he takes over Detective Comics, he's good. So, and we'll see that toward the end of Batman and the Outsiders. He's reached their peaks, and then they send him to Detective. Just pretty good stuff, and it's just so cool to see someone. And it's amazing because he did this run for a few years. He does about a year of Detective Comics. Well, less than a year, but does about 8 issues of Detective Comics, and then he even does that. He's done a couple things for DC, but yet most people remember Excalibur, and I understand why they remember Excalibur. It was a hot selling book. Chris Claremont writing, the X-Men at their pitch. Man, look at that Batman there. That is something. And look at this. This is a beautiful pose. That is just beautiful. So, Metamorphos like Plastic Man apparently here. Yeah. There was definitely still was some silliness to DC even in the 80s. Um so anyway, um it's I still don't think a lot of people remember Alan Davis drawing Batman. So I thought it'd be cool for this video to go in. Look at that. Katana, so cool. Just seeing just knowing where Alan Davis is gonna go. He's a pro, but I think he improves much better when he just becomes penciler, and other people like Paul Neary, and then eventually after Paul Neary, by the way, rest in peace, Paul Neary, and we'll see him come after Paul Neary. It's Mark Farmer. Those are the two inkers most associated with Alan Davis. But right now, in these couple issues here so far, he has been inking himself. But I think that once somebody steps in to ink him, he really blossoms, I think, as a penciler. During the Captain Britain run that he was inking himself. So awesome stuff. So, And so all these issues we are going to see happen before Batman Year One. So um it is, and look at Alan Davis's signature there. Not quite what we are even used to. So um this is all, even though it's the mid 80s, Batman Year One, I believe, doesn't happen till later in 86, I believe. And so we're not quite there. The guy looks like a redheaded Jesus. Or at least what we white people think of Jesus. So, and so Alan Davis is still inking himself. It's weird because it's a Batman book that isn't Batman centric, but of course Batman is front and center because to sell the book, because Batman is so popular. We have had different incarnations of the Batman and the Outsiders here. So here's Bruce Wayne. I love the shadow there. The thing about the Outsiders is these were C-list heroes. I mean, they weren't even, and Katana becomes, really cool, and Black Lightning himself isn't not very popular during this time. None of these heroes really were. Man, look at that image of Batman. Is that not cool? That is so cool, and him smiling. That is awesome. That is awesome. Oh my goodness! Look at that! Look at the eyes there. Him smiling, and that guy there. That's Metamorpho. That's why he's got the um those weird arms there. So, but yeah, that is pretty cool. And so here we go. And yep. Oh, and John Workman, by the way, is one of my favorite letterers. John Workman, who is doing these beautiful letters here, is Walter Simonson's primary letterer, and um, he is someone whose style of lettering is one that I try to um, copy. So anyway, so these heroes are not popular, which is why even with Batman, the book just wasn't doing too well because but you can't always have a Superman. Everyone can't be Superman. If everybody's Superman, then nobody really then there's nothing special. But it's just hard, and in everything, like we'll use wrestling. I like wrestling, so we'll use WWE as an example because they're the most popular, even though I'm more of an AEW kind of person. So we've got your main people. So you got, as of this recording, who knows if in 100 years if this recording is still up, who's there. But right now in 2026 we've got Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns kind of being the alphas of WWE. And then we've got people like Randy Orton and so forth. But you've got to also have people at the bottom. You cannot have everyone is not a main eventer, and it's the same thing in characters and artists and all that kind of stuff. Um, Someone has to carry the water, and so um, you've got to try, and you never know what is going to work with fans. But one of the things is that after a while, after you get the sales report and look at stuff, then maybe one needs to try something else. Like if these characters are not, that is cool. Here, this image here. Um, if particular characters aren't sticking, then maybe try Lionel Davis still uh, inking himself. Then try something else. Until something hits with fans. You know, you never know what's gonna hit. So keep throwing stuff. Give it some time, and then after, you've given these characters practically 2 years, and the fan reaction. The book improves because of Alan Davis, but then when Alan Davis goes, then the book ends up getting canceled because Batman was gone. Number one, there was no Batman, and number two, Alan Davis left, so there went everything. So, um, man, you just gotta try with different characters. It was the same with Todd McFarlane and Infinity Inc., which I have covered his Infinity Inc. Run, and it's the same thing, man. People aren't accepting the characters. Try new characters and see what's up. Um, See if you eventually, create one that the fans like, even if it's a clone of another. Like for example, have a Wolverine style character. That's one of the things that the Image guys all did. Mark Silvestri had a oh my gosh, a Ripclaw, and um Jim Lee and the Wildcats had Warblade. So those were Wolverine stand-ins. Just try to have something that visually looks cool. And so, but Alan Davis, man, he is growing and growing and growing. Look at that. That is awesome. And you can see that at least we have had some consistency with the art, and it that is awesome. That's something you don't really see nowadays. Is a lot of artists don't. I love the lettering. You can see John Workman is still doing this awesome lettering here, and Alan Davis is still penciling and inking himself. That's one thing you don't see him do when he's at Marvel. Everything he's done is with Paul Neary. And then when he takes over in the 90s, that's awesome with the Batman on the phone there and the cape kind of hanging around. He's like I said, he's got Mark Farmer. And then I don't know much about Mike W. Barr. I know he was Alan Davis's writer in Detective Comics and did other stuff, but he sort of disappeared. Um, or just did stuff that I didn't follow, but I just don't remember much of him. Look at that. He was wearing a mask with the. That is just so freaking. Uh. And by the way, this is my favorite color blue for Batman. It's just looks so awesome and so distinct here. So, and I'm gonna try to cover the entire his entire run. Again, it's so cool putting the pupils in there. So cool. But have you guys noticed that there's different blue between this blue here and this blue on Batman? I don't know why, but I've seen it a few times where there's been a bit of a change. And so All right, we'll go to the next one. Great cover there. I like the coloring of it, like they're watching TV or something. Very, and now we're seeing Alan Davis's signature kind of starting to become what we're used to. But I like this. I like this cover. Awesome stuff. Alan Davis still inking himself. I have the original issues, but man, must confess this is the first time that I have looked at them in years and years and years. Probably haven't looked at them in, oh goodness gracious, over maybe 30 years. I think I looked at them. I I I should say maybe I looked at them maybe in the early 2000s. Because sometimes I'll get in a kick, and the way I organize my comic books is I try to organize them by artists as opposed to, some of them by characters, but most of them I try certain ones like Todd McFarlane, Alan Davis, um, Eric Larson, Jim Lee, all those will be like together. Sometimes writers like Bendis. I'll try to keep the Bendises together. Again, look at the eyes there with Batman. But Walter Simonson and John Byrne, I try to keep their stuff together. Because I remember, like, I'll remember, oh yeah, John Byrne on Hulk. These are, here we go, or so and so. So, um, I have like Alan Davis stuff together, and I know that some people may not know who draws what, but I remember the artists and the pencilers, so I keep things up. Frank Miller stuff to me is all together, and so I was looking at some Alan Davis, and so yeah, I did pull these, but I haven't looked at these or read these. I don't think I've read these probably since I was in college. I think I read them, and then that's about it. And again, because these characters don't mean anything to me except for Batman, after a while, I'm just looking at the art. I wanted to mention here in this top panel that's very Neil Adamsy. Um, so and Alan Davis really made a lot of improvement working on this book, and he ends up leaving, and then he's replaced by Norm Brayfogle. Is it Brayfogle or Brayfogle? And I like Norm, but Alan Davis is better, and DC lets him go. And he really didn't do anything at Marvel until Excalibur. He did two issues of Uncanny X-Men. He did 213 with Sabretooth versus Wolverine during the Mutant Massacre. And then he did 215, which is the first appearance of the Old Soldiers. And then he did annual, is it 10 or 11, where they go into that mystical house the X-Men do. So then that was it. And then you don't see anything until after Follow the Mutants, where he takes Excalibur. So he leaves, but doesn't really do much of anything at Marvel. And so eventually then he does a ton of stuff. So then he does Wolverine. He does like a Wolverine annual. that he writes himself, and then eventually he starts writing his own work. I think he did Excalibur, but before Excalibur he had done some I don't, if you look up Alan Davis in like Wikipedia or whatever, you'll see a lot of stuff that all the stuff that he has done. But he had a book where he created all the characters in there, and he did that, and he started writing his own stuff. And one of the coolest things he does is he goes back to DC and does this book called The Nail. It's a three-part mini series, which is Elseworld, where Superman isn't found by the Kents because they hit a nail on the road, and that gives them a flat, so they don't get to see Superman. So, and yeah, it's kind of cool. So it's a three-part book. And so here we are. Like I said, he cuts his teeth really doing this series here. And as I mentioned before, I have his Detective Comics run all already. So it's on the Batman playlist. And so there are two more issues left. Now he does do four issues of just the Outsiders. But because he'll do 33 through 36, so he'll do four issues of that. But because this video has already been over 30 minutes, um which I don't think people will mind looking at Alan Davis's beautiful art. I'll do those in a separate video at another time. But there's no Batman whatsoever on those, and I don't remember him being his own inker all the way through this series. I thought Paul Neary joined him, but he apparently inks himself the entire time he does Batman and the Outsiders. I don't know if on the Outsiders he gets help. But this dude definitely goes on to uh become a superstar. Not to the levels, of course, of Jim Lee. Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and Mark Silvestri are different beasts. Um, but if you are going to say, if you're gonna judge, say, based on a grade, and you're gonna give these super popular people an A, then Alan Davis is a solid B. He is a solid uh work workman, solid penciler who does these amazing compositions, and he's really good and solid, but it didn't. So this is the best cover of this series because it just looks so cool. We'll look at this cover. And so this is the last issue of Batman and the Outsiders, and it just becomes the Outsiders after Batman leaves. So the series actually continues. It just continues without Batman. Now, the reason they have Batman leave is because we're going to start on Batman year one. And so the editor, Denny O'Neil, doesn't really want Batman involved in books, but he changes his mind and they relaunch the Justice League. But the Justice League, which I am covering, which becomes the Justice League International with Guy Gardner and Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. So it's got, so these Outsiders are like D-listers, so then they're like B and C listers on that book. And Kevin Maguire and Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis are the creative team. and they give him Batman, but Batman, like in this book, isn't there all the time. And so, but while he's in there, and I'm covering that series, I also have a playlist with that. And so, um, this is where Batman is like, you know, he's leaving. So, and I love the eyes here. And so they're like, we'll stay our own. And Batman being such a jerk, go then, leave me. It doesn't matter. Soldiers come and go, but my war never ends. And Batman just like, fuck you, I'm leaving. So the series goes on without Batman. So we'll how many minutes? 35 minutes? Yeah, man. So it's going to take about 3 minutes and ish. Yeah, we'll just do that at another time. So we'll end it on the previous page here on this panel with Batman being a bit of a jerk. So Alan Davis on Batman and the Outsiders. Hope you liked. Like I said, we just looked at the art. Really didn't do much. Got to see him draw this sucker himself. No inker, or I'm sorry, yeah, no inker. Just he inked himself, and yeah, this is where he, I think, really showed the growth prior to him taking off and ending up in Excalibur. So, all right, like and subscribe. I do thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.